Hello, in this video we're going to have a look at how to write a good report for the Cambridge English First exam. So let's think about the nuts and bolts first. Only the Cambridge English First exam offers the option of writing a report. In the First for Schools exam you won't be expected to write a report, so if that's the exam you're taking you can probably just, click next or go to the next video or whatever, maybe watch some Fail Army or something like that instead of watching this. But if you're doing the Cambridge English First exam, stay tuned. We're going to go through the different aspects of the report that you'll need to bear in mind when you write one in the exam, if you want to. So keep in mind at all times who will actually read your report. We'll come back to that in a minute. Read the rubric carefully and underline the content points you have to include. It's very easy to miss something if you're not paying attention. You can write on the exam paper, it will be destroyed afterwards. So just scribble around, maybe draw out your plan for the writing on the same piece of paper. Make sure that everything in the rubric appears in your report. Reports need headings, so choose your headings carefully and use them as a structure for your report. And then simply write your report in 140 to 190 words. It's okay to go a little bit over. You can go under the word limit. I don't recommend it though, because this is one of your few chances to prove to the examiners that you can speak and write good English. So if you don't use that opportunity, you need to think twice about the exam really. So, who is the target reader? Who is actually going to read your report? Well, the target reader is, generally speaking, the person who asked you to write the report. They want some information and they want it to be as clear as possible. So the target reader might be a superior at work, your boss for example, or it could be a school principal, it could be many different people like that. But generally they want to know some specific information and they want to be able to locate that information in your report quickly and easily. So here's an example task, typical of Cambridge really. A group of British teachers will be coming to your school next month. They're going to look at the way that you use computers at the school and they want to know a couple of things. They want to know what technology is used in a typical class at the school, and they want to know which class they should come and watch and why. So, always keep the target reader in mind. The more information you present to them, the better, but always keep it clear and understandable. Remember that you're not graded on your factual accuracy. If you want to make things up, make things up. Nobody's going to Google the things that you write to see if they're true. And that's really the key. That way you can be as specific as possible. Don't generalize, because generalizations don't use good language. Specific language is important in these sorts of tasks. Now I'll have a look at what we mean by that in a moment. So in terms of the structure then, there are only really 2 content points in this example, so I think you only need 3 paragraphs. The first one will briefly introduce the report. It's basically taking the rubric and rewriting it a bit using your own words. Don't copy. The second and third paragraphs will then develop those content points. There's no need for a real conclusion. The last thing you write about for the second point will probably serve as a conclusion. It will tidy things up. You don't have a lot of words in which to write your ideas. So I would just not worry about conclusion as such in the traditional form. Simply finish the last point in a way that makes it seem like this is the end of the report. And remember, you don't need a title for your report, but you can use one if you want. You certainly won't lose any marks for doing so. So here's our example then. We start with the introduction, which takes the idea of the rubric and just puts it in a different form. It rewrites it a little bit. Then we talk about the current facilities at the school, and we say perhaps where these things have come from, and we give a bit more specific information. It's very easy to talk about just computers, but beyond that we can also use terms like interactive whiteboard, we can talk about webcams and what they're for, so this adds a little bit more detail. Then we can talk about the best class to observe, and it's really important why we've chosen this class. And then you'll notice that at the end, the last sentence of that paragraph does kind of feel like a conclusion, because it refers then back to the beginning, which is this idea of the people visiting our school in the first place. So let's have a look at the different areas that you're graded on. First of all, there's the content to consider. It's important you consider all the content points. Everything has to be relevant. So make sure that you don't get distracted by some great idea you've got. Don't start talking about sports facilities if you're supposed to be talking about computing facilities. And add as much specific information as you can so that the target reader will feel fully informed. In terms of the communicative achievement, you want to keep the right register, so it should be formal or neutral. Using the passive voice is a great idea. Here, this is kind of the formal way of saying things, so instead of saying, I've written this report, we can say this report has been written, and then we can explain why. But don't go crazy with the passive. If you overuse it, it shows that you don't have this kind of flexibility of language. You want to be able to show that you have other structures you can use, but also reading things that are all written in the passive just gets boring, it's horrible. So try to vary it a little bit. Try to introduce complex ideas as well as simple ones. So if we go back to the example, we talked about the computers being in every classroom. And that's a simple idea. Interactive whiteboards is a little bit more complex. The webcam idea is a great example of a complex idea with its justification. We didn't just say that we had webcams in every room, we explained what they're for. And it's not the first thing you might think about either. So it gives you a good complex idea to demonstrate to the examiners. And by using headings and formal language, you make it clear that this is a report that you're writing. It's not going to be a letter, so don't start dear sir or madam. I have seen people do that. It's not a letter. To get the communicative achievement marks, you need to write a report that looks like a report. In terms of organisation, it's not always easy to show the links between paragraphs in a report, especially because each paragraph addresses a point and the point is introduced by its heading. So if you find it difficult to find the links between paragraphs, just concentrate on the links from sentence to sentence. Each sentence should build the idea of the paragraph until the paragraph expresses one full idea with extra explanations. And try to use different sentence patterns as well, using little clauses at the start of a sentence like, it's highly likely that. Now, I mean, these are nice things to put into more formal writing anyway, but it certainly helps with the organisation in terms of varying sentence structure. And then finally we come to the language. Now, it might seem difficult to use advanced language in a report. I mean, the topics themselves are usually so dry. How can you get creative? Well, you can, and that's by being specific. The more specific, the better. We come again back to this example of the computers. Everybody knows the word computer. How many people know the word interactive whiteboard or the word webcam? And you think of all the different things that you could then bring in from your own world experience. If you can't think of anything, think of something from a different field, like gaming, computer games, something like that. If you can justify its inclusion in a classroom, by all means use it. So you could say we use wireless PlayStation 4 controllers. Why? To navigate or to control the navigation of a drone that has a camera attached, and we take it out and we do whatever. You're using specific language and you're explaining why it's there. If you just drop things in randomly with nothing to back them up, it won't convince anybody. And remember, with reports, if you're going to write a report, you'll need to be good at the passive. Now, passive can be difficult because if you get the construction a bit wrong, it's going to cause confusion. You're changing the regular subject for the object of a direct sentence or the active voice sentence. So you've got to be careful. You don't want, for example, as I've seen my students write before, the bone ate or was eat the dog or something like that. If you get the structure wrong, you can cause confusion. So it's really useful before you go into the exam, just kind of go over all the passive constructions that you know, so you're really perfectly solid on that aspect. So that brings us to the end of this little tutorial then on writing a report for the Cambridge English First exam, and I have a question for you. We've been looking at the use of technology in the classroom. I love technology in the classroom, partly because then I don't have to do as much work myself. I can hand over most of the work to my students, and that's fantastic for me. It means that at the end of the day I'm not quite as shattered as I would normally be. What about for you? Have you used technology to help you learn or improve your English? Have you studied through Duolingo or Memrise? Can you think of anything else that can help? As always, please write your ideas in the comments below. We can share these great ideas with the whole world, and then people will learn from each other, which is fantastic. It's just what we want. So until the next video, that's all from me today. Thanks very much. Goodbye.